But right across the country, municipalities are struggling, and property taxes are on the rise, ranging from a 4.9% hike in Montreal up to 9.6% in St. John's.
Struggle these days to make a living and pay their expenses.
I think it's an aggressive increase. Like, we just got one last year. It's a lot.
The dream of home ownership is dying, and adding 10% tax to it just doesn't seem fair.
Canada is fast becoming a tax nightmare, a veritable maze of endless fiscal demands, and things are only starting to heat up. As the government's insatiety for workers' revenues continues to aggravate, Canadians are finding themselves caught in the crosshairs of an ever-expanding tax regime. It keeps going downhill. With each passing year, new tax policies emerge, further entangling citizens in a web of financial obligations. It's a relentless onslaught, and the pressure is mounting. Now, don't get me wrong, taxes are a necessary evil. They pay for the roads we drive on, the schools our kids attend, and the healthcare we rely on. But when you take a closer look at the numbers raked up by taxpayers, it's hard not to feel Trudeau's government is taking Canadians on a bumpy ride. Over the years, Canada has maintained its reputation as a high-tax country, but in the current economic context, this taxation is spiraling out of control. According to a new poll, 74% of Canadians feel the average family is overtaxed. Even more people are saying they're forking out too much for what they get for it. In 2022, a report showed that the average Canadian family paid 45.2% of their income in taxes. And with the rising cost of living across cities in Canada, citizens are left with very little to cater to their daily needs. As a result, a whopping 72%, 7 out of 10 Canadians, believe the tax burden on individuals is too high. Recent OECD data posits that Canada's tax revenues equaled a staggering 12.3% of the nation's total GDP in 2022. To put that into perspective, the average tax to GDP ratio among OECD countries was 24.6%. In other words, Canada is taking a bigger slice of the economic pie than most of its peers. To be fair, Canada does have some pretty impressive public services to show for all that tax revenue. The country's healthcare system is the envy of many countries, and the social safety net is one of the strongest in the world. But still, citizens can't help but feel they are being nickeled and dimed at every turn. From carbon tax to property tax and more, Canadians are expected to pay even more in taxes in the coming years. However, the question remains, why is taxation in Canada the way it is? How do these increasing taxes impact Canadians and their overall financial well-being? In this video, we'll peel back the layers, providing you with the unadulterated truth behind these numbers, revealing just how dire the situation frankly is, and proving that Canadian taxes have no doubt gone off the rail. Currently ranked at 25th out of 172 most taxed nations of the world, Canada finds itself in a position of considerable fiscal responsibility. When you break it down by individual tax burden, the average Canadian family paid a whopping 45% of their income in taxes in 2023. That's like working a 9-to-5 job but only getting paid for half of it. It gets even more mind-boggling. If you're a high-income earner in Canada, you could be facing a marginal tax rate of up to 54%. That's more than half of every extra dollar you earn going straight into the government's coffers. But here's the real kicker. Despite all that tax revenue, Canada still expects to rack up a budget deficit of $38.5 billion by the end of 2024. This staggering deficit underscores the inefficiencies and challenges within Canada's fiscal management system. Despite high tax rates, the government struggles to balance its budget and control spending. This deficit not only poses a significant financial burden on taxpayers, but also raises concerns about the sustainability of Canada's economy in the long run. Addressing this deficit will require comprehensive reforms and prudent financial management to ensure fiscal stability and prosperity for future generations. There's always a constant push from tax hikes from the Canadian government, despite already high taxes on almost everything, from food to carbon, property, and even the recently proposed rain tax. The topic of the convoluted Canadian taxation wouldn't be complete without shining a light on what has become one of the most punitive, regressive, and economically destructive tax policies in modern history, the federal carbon tax.
The federal carbon tax rose to $80 a ton this week. prompting pain at the pumps.
It's just outrageous. I don't think taxing people is going to save the planet.
Ostensibly implemented under the noble-sounding pretext of fighting climate change, this tax has morphed into a terrifying revenue beast that punishes average Canadians for daring to turn up their home's heat or drive to work. Since its inception, the carbon tax has been steadily rising, with no signs of slowing down. In fact, Canadians can expect to pay even more in the coming years as the government tightens its grip on their hard-earned dollars. In provinces like British Columbia, carbon prices have gone from $50 to $60 per ton of carbon dioxide. The new carbon policy postulates that provinces and territories must maintain a carbon price of at least $65 per ton in 2023. As of 2019, over 70 jurisdictions representing about 20% of global GHG emissions have put a price on carbon. The consequences of suffocating consumers and businesses with these exorbitant costs are already evident in higher prices, job losses, reduced economic growth, and shriveled investment across the country. And to what end? The government's own climate assertions concede that under the best scenarios, the gargantuan carbon tax costs will only reduce emissions by a measly 50 million tons by 2030, barely a drop in the global bucket. However, contrary to expectations, the carbon tax proceeds are not flowing back to tax-weary Canadians as rebates and funding green initiatives. In fact, a report revealed that in 2019 alone, the federal government amassed an additional $32 billion from the carbon tax. Shockingly, only 0.17% of the promised 9% rebates to citizens and businesses across Canadian provinces have been issued. The carbon tax pales in comparison to some of the other tax-increasing schemes being concocted by the government. One of the latest blows to tax-weary Canadian wallets is the proposed rain tax.
You know, you thought it couldn't get any worse. You're being taxed for this, you're being taxed for that. Don't go to Toronto, because they're going to tax you when it rains.
The government aims to tax Canadians for the simple occurrence of rain falling from the sky. The province of British Columbia plans to impose taxes on homeowners for the downpour on their properties, dubbing it a rain tax. That's right, the mere presence of precipitation on Canadians' roofs will soon come with a price tag. This Orwellian policy, which has already been approved in some municipalities like Richmond, Guelph, and Mississauga, would see residential households charged a direct fee for every liter of rainwater that runs off their roof or driveway into municipal stormwater systems. As ludicrous, infuriating, and imponderable as the idea of a rain tax might sound, let's shed a little light on the Canadian logic behind that. When rain falls on your property, some of it seeps into the ground, but a lot of it runs off into the city's stormwater system. And that stormwater system needs to be maintained and upgraded to handle all that extra water. In Canada, some municipalities have decided that the best way to pay for that maintenance is to charge property owners approximately $1.68 per square meter of hard surface area, or based on how much runoff their land generates. It really does pour when it rains on Canadian soil. On the other hand, the city of Montreal recently made headlines with a bold proposal that has shocked residents and businesses: a tax on all beverages, extending beyond just sugary drinks to include essentials like milk, juice, and even water. This sweeping measure, if enacted, would mark a significant departure from conventional taxation practices and has sparked widespread debate and controversy. To address the elephant in the room, let's examine why the Canadian tax condition is so profoundly scathing. One of the primary issues is the sheer size of the government's spending. As the government continues to increase its expenditures, taxpayers are feeling the burden of higher tax rates and wondering how sustainable this approach is in the long run. In 2022, the total expenditures reached an astonishing $374 billion, a figure that is larger than the GDP of many small nations. This level of spending requires a significant amount of revenue, which the government primarily obtains through taxation. As a result, Canadians are facing higher tax bills to accommodate the government's spending habits. Another issue that has come to light is the government's tendency to throw money at problems without thoroughly evaluating the potential consequences. The Phoenix pay system fiasco is a prime example. The government invested over $1 billion in a new payroll system intended to streamline processes and save money in the long run. However, the system failed spectacularly, leaving thousands of public servants with incorrect pay or no pay at all. Canadians are now facing the cost of resolving this debacle as their tax dollars are being used to clean up the mess. Moreover, the government's support of crown corporations has also raised eyebrows among taxpayers. These government-owned businesses are meant to operate independently, but they often serve as a means for the government to channel funds into pet projects and reward political allies. When these corporations inevitably face financial difficulties, the taxpayers must bear the burden of bailing them out. The lack of accountability in government spending is a significant frustration for many Canadians. Politicians often campaign on promises of fiscal responsibility and balancing the budget, but once in office, they seem to abandon these principles in favor of unchecked spending. As concerns mount, Canadians are calling for change. Some advocate for significant spending cuts and a reduction in the size of government, while others propose increasing taxes on the wealthy and closing loopholes to create a more equitable system. Regardless of the approach, it is clear that the current trajectory of government spending is unsustainable. For Canadians, the lingering economic situation no doubt feels like paying top dollar for a meal, only to be served a lukewarm plate of poutine with a side of disappointment. Canada's high tax rates can be attributed to a variety of factors, ranging from the country's expansive social programs to its relatively small population spread over a vast geographical area. One of the primary reasons for Canada's high taxes is the country's commitment to providing a robust social safety net for its citizens. Canada offers a wide range of social programs, including universal health care, public education, pension plans, and various welfare benefits. These programs are largely funded through tax revenues, which means that the government must levy higher taxes to sustain them. In addition to social welfare, Canada's tax dollars also go towards maintaining and upgrading the country's infrastructure. With a landmass of nearly 10 million square kilometers and just over 38 million population, Canada faces unique infrastructure development and maintenance challenges. The country's harsh weather conditions and vast distances between urban centers further complicate this issue, requiring significant investments in transportation networks, utilities, and telecommunications. Another factor contributing to Canada's high taxes is its relatively small population compared to its geographic size. This means that the cost of providing services and maintaining infrastructure is spread out over a smaller tax base, leading to higher tax rates for individuals and businesses. Moreover, Canada's federal system of government, which shares responsibility between the federal, provincial, and territorial governments, can also contribute to higher overall tax rates. Each level of government has its own tax requirements, which can compound the total tax burden for Canadians. However, critics argue that Canada's high tax rates can have negative consequences for the economy, such as reducing competitiveness, discouraging investment, and creating disincentives for work and entrepreneurship. Some also contend that the government could achieve greater efficiency in delivering public services, potentially allowing for lower tax rates without sacrificing quality. The unsustainable dynamic between burdened taxpayers and profligate governments cannot persist indefinitely. The constant cycle of tax increases has continued to lead thousands of Canadians down a detrimental path, placing undue strain on hard-working middle-class residents. At a critical juncture, the Canadian government, without adequate plans, is fated to reach a tipping point where excessive taxation starts to erode the very economic vitality and productivity that sustain their operations. This is evident in the concerning trend of sluggish GDP growth, lagging employment rates, household debts, and declining business formations, leading to a compounding effect on the nation's overall economic health. If you like this video, hit the like button and help spread the word, and remember to subscribe to get notifications on our latest news and analysis. In the meantime, check out one of these videos here to learn more. Thanks for watching.